Okay guys, this is going to be a tough video for you to get through. My apologies. This is the only way I can think to do this in a quick way that's going to make sense to you, so my apologies. So the video earlier that I had you watch showed a concentrated force that was large against a smaller force, so 50, 50, 50, and 50, that's 250. And the idea was that if I split up into these 50s, okay, so these split up to take 5 different points, that I could get them to split up to garrison those points. Oh, that's not really, 100. And then what they would do is they would leave small contingents to maybe get a larger force to attack one point. So if you haven't watched that video, then this is not going to do you as much good. But the idea is that they talk about defeat in detail, but he doesn't really talk as much about concentration of force. He mentions it, and really what we're talking about today is that other part to defeat in detail, and that's concentration of force and how that applies to Kiss of War. And so let's do a quick exercise. I'm going to ask you a question. Hopefully you get this right. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So first of all, if I have a rally coming at me at a base of 2 million, and I have a march that is 280,000, should I attack that 2 million march? And the answer is no. Why? Because the 2 million march will absolutely decimate your 280,000, and you will barely scratch that 2 million at all. All right, so there's question 1 that we've answered. Let's look at question 2. If the enemy has 200,000 in each march, and I have 200,000 in each march. Bad handwriting, sorry guys. And we battle, which is going to win? Well, that's really going to come down to some very technicalities, like your percentage for your attack, defense, health on each march, blah, 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 which one's fighting. But it's going to be a pretty, even if it's not an even exchange, it's going to be close to even at the end of the day. However, is it more beneficial for me to attack with 200,000 marches that are 100,000? Well, yes, it is. Because after the exchange, let's pretend that we destroy all these guys up here. I'm left with, and this is just an example, this isn't true to scale. Let's say I'm left with less than 200,000 in each march. So that was a good exchange because I did more damage than they did. However, if the enemy marches out another guy who has 200,000 in each march and attacks my 100,000 marches that are out there that it took damage, then the exchange does me no good, because then he wipes me out and he is left with the 100,000 marches. Again, not to scale, but you get the idea. Blah, 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 blah. So it's not as good as it seems if I'm leaving my marches out there, right? Because then we just got back and forth. So in a situation like that, we see that there's a very big negative to having less units in a march than the enemy. So we're going to pretend that we see a bunch of tanks out here. This is his march. It has that picture of the person above it. And what does it have over here? Well, it's got a health bar. And so a lot of times when you're clicking on people's health bars, instead of seeing this full green bar, you see it It's only partially. And that lets you know that that is a march that is not at full capacity for what that officer can bring. And so that's a march that generally gets targeted. Marches that are not at full capacity. Okay, so that's one way you can tell if the march is at full capacity. It does not tell you necessarily how many units are in that march until you attack it or scout it. All right. Now, if I have, so we looked at the number of units is a big factor. So let's look at, and we looked at a rally. We don't want to attack it because it has so many more units than that one march. Let's look at it this way. I have 200,000 units in this march, and the enemy has 200,000 units in 5 marches. 200,000 divided by 5 is going to be 40,000 in each march. I know it's boring. Stay with me, because I'm going to blow your mind here in a minute. Now, if you had 40,000 units in 5 marches, would you attack a 200,000 unit march? Well, here's the answer. No, because what's going to happen is all 40,000 of these units are going to get annihilated. Sorry. So they get annihilated, and maybe it knocks you down to, let's say, 160,000. But they just lost 200,000. So you lose 40, they lose 200,000, right? So it's a way better exchange for you. So we all get that. So what happens if the enemy has 200,000 unit marches? And you run a march expansion, and you can put 400,000 units in a march. Now, this is where it gets deceptive to players. Is this a better exchange than if you had 5 200,000 unit marches? Well, damage is attack, defense, and health are determined by the base unit, the base attack. And so we're going to pretend for our little exercise here that the base attack is 10 for a unit. The percentage wise, so it would be 10 times the percentage of attack. And just for us, we're going to assume that the percentage of attack is 200%. That would be times 2. That equals 20. 20 times the amount of units, so 200, is 4,000 attack. Now, if we pretended that it had 10 defense and 10 health, then we could assume 4,000 attack, 4,000 defense, and 4,000 health. Again, this is not to scale, it's just to show you something. Attack, defense, and health is 4,000. However, my 400,000 march, it has 10. The percentage is still 2. Let's say that it's all even. But the amount of units is 400,000. That's 8,000. So it has 8,000 attack, defense, and health. And you're like, okay, but he still has more units, so total he has more attack, defense, and health. Well, not necessarily. Because what happens is we have to look at what the equation is. The general attack, defense, health equation for battle is this. Attack minus defense equals the damage. That damage is subtracted from the health. And that gives us our total. So this doesn't work, of course, because if I had 4 minus 8, I would end up with a negative number. And so video games, this is a very old school equation. This is not what we use anymore. The actual equation, there's no telling what it actually is, but it's a special formula. But basically, it's something like a divisional formula instead of a subtraction formula. But basically, the idea here is this. Your 4,000 attack is now against my 8,000 defense. Whereas my 8,000 attack is now dealing damage to your 4,000 defense. We get those numbers, and so this is the damage you're dealing to me, and this is the damage I'm dealing to you. Much bigger, right? But then your health my health subtracts that little bit of damage, which gives me my final total. My damage is subtracted from your little health, which gives me my total. So I'm dealing way more damage to you than you're dealing to me. So what this is actually doing is this is tricking the enemy when you run one march with an expansion into thinking they have superior numbers. But when it actually comes to the equation, you're the one who has the superior numbers. It's exactly what's happening when you attack a rally with 5 marches. You got that twin rally coming at you and you think, oh, I'm gonna run my 5 marches out and melt it. And what happens? Every time your 5 marches get melted. And even if it doesn't melt all of them, it melts most of them. So what we're actually doing by running that one really good march with a march expansion is we have the concentration of force. By keeping all of our units in one maxed out march. This is how we're dealing the damage. So it looks like they have more units. But what we have is concentration of force, which makes us stronger than their 5 marches. And even if we lose the battle, the amount of damage we have done to them versus they've done to us is so great that we have done so much more damage to them that they have a much higher repair cost. And they don't realize what's happening until it's too late. So whenever you're fighting, this is why we tell everybody to do one march, maxed out. Run your expansion. Let them run out the multiple shit marches. And they'll have some good ones, but they'll have some bad ones too. And the overall effect is that they're going to have way more damage happen to them than you have to you. So hopefully this makes a little bit more sense mathematically. And I apologize for this, how annoying this video is.